I don't care, Simon, about your medical issues and what you
Hey
had to
man,
pull from where and get things shoved wherever. We're doing the Oh,
it's the
folks,
meds that
hi.
are. Oh, we all know. Okay, sure.
Yeah, okay. Uh, Folks, this is Screen Watching. My name's Dan Barrett, joined here
Hello,
by
Dan.
Simon Foster. This
Hello,
is
Simon.
the most reputable TV screen culture podcast on this whole internet.
Really? That's good to know.
Simon, you're well?
Oh, yeah, I'm not too bad. Yeah, household of sickness. I had COVID earlier this week, and the your friend and my wife, and my friend too, she's getting her knee chopped out as we speak, but she's on the road to recovery. No, it's been a good week. It's been a good week. We've bounced back like the healthy, middle class, well fed people that we are. How you doing?
Okay, awesome. Folks, look, I'm fine. Look, had sickness, we've had wellness, it's been a whole week. But Simon, let's dive into some of the big news stories of the week and also the reviews of the week. This is what we're doing on the show. We're
Yeah.
going to play an opening intro. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the SAG AFTRA strike finally being resolved. What does that mean going forward? Let's find out. We're
All
going to
right.
do some reviews. We've got some big titles. I'm going to take a look at the hot new reality show. Yeah, that's right. I'm looking at a reality show. It's
I know.
called 007 Road to a Million,
Oh,
a
wow, we're
James
off
Bond
brand.
themed reality show.
Sure.
Well, is it? I mean, it's not that off brand. It's a James Bond thing. But here's the thing: is it any good? Stick around and find out. But also quietly, I think we all know. I'm also going to take a look at a show which is a bit long in the tooth in terms of getting to Australia, but it just debuted this week, and it's a show that's pretty close to my heart. It's called
Mm,
My Adventures with Superman.
you
Now,
love your
Simon, you got
Superman.
two things you're going to be taking a look at.
Well, everyone's talking about the Marvels, so I'm going to talk about the Marvels, and we'll also be looking at the new David Fincher film, The Killer, which is going to then lead us into an intermission where we talk about the our favourite films and moments from Herr Fincher, who's one of the most exciting directors around, and I'm looking forward to that little chit chat. What else have you been watching? A little bit of history, a little bit of birthdays. It's a full show, Dan Barrett.
Wait, hang on, Simon. I'm getting a phone call. This is it's our lawyers. Okay, I'm
Yes,
actually legally required to say this is too much show.
that's a lot of show. A lot of show. See you in court.
Yeah. Okay. So, folks, let's play the opening intro. Let's get this thing started.
This is not like TV, only better.
Television! Teacher! Mother!
Secret lover.
What, that's it? That's your movie?
Well, I said that I had an idea for a movie.
All right, let's get the show started. Simon, the big thing that started this week is that the SAG AFTRA strike is over. Production
Woohoo.
is resuming across Hollywood over the next couple of weeks as the wheels, the mechanisms of Hollywood start sort of ramping up. We're
Thank
not going to see
goodness.
things. It's not one of these. Yeah, look, so here's what needs to happen now. As we're recording this, it's Friday morning Australian time, so I'm not quite sure when they've actually decided the vote's going to be, but the actors still actually need to vote, the membership body of SAG AFTRA. They need to
Right.
actually say, yes, we support that this strike is, over and that we're happy to go with the deal.
But in
That'll probably happen.
principle,
That's
the
just a
bosses have,
formality.
yeah, the bosses have said, look, it's all happening. We've struck a deal. It's not quite what we want.
No, no,
Go into just a
Simon,
little bit of detail.
let's not talk about the bosses. Let's say the SAG AFTRA management, okay? Because the
Oh, good.
bosses are the studio heads, and damn the bosses, it's all about the man, the working man. But
Oh, God.
no, so look, here's the thing. So we don't actually know some of the finer details yet. All the fine details will really be made very clear and apparent when it goes to the vote.
Mm.
Okay, so we're hearing from the SAG AFTRA management, so Fran Drescher and Duncan Crabtree, third name, about what it is that they've agreed to, and they haven't really quite gotten everything they were asking for. But you never
No.
do in a negotiation. That's kind of it. But
Yeah,
what
exactly.
I'm
They went
interested in
high.
and what I haven't seen reported, yeah, look, what I haven't seen reported, Simon, is what's happening with the AI. To me, that was the existential issue over it. And think about AI. The issue of AI wasn't just Tom Hanks, is he going to be living on for years to come in roles that, he hadn't signed off on when he was alive? That's not the
Forrest Gump.
concern. The real concern that the membership body of SAG-AFTRA have is your average working Joe who ends up working as like a background actor, which is a huge chunk of the SAG-AFTRA membership. If
Sure.
you're working in a background actor, what's to stop, brand X studio from saying, hey, look, we're going to record this bunch of actors, and then that bunch of actors are populating the backgrounds of movies and TV shows for years and years to come. They get paid for 5 days worth of work, and then like an eternity of them working in the background.
Studios own the image and
carrying coffees and cafes and
exactly, yeah. Which stinks. Which
that's
sucks.
Exactly it.
And that has
so
to be
that's the big concern.
The
and I haven't heard enough. I haven't heard enough, Simon, about what the futures are there to sort of comment. But what we can talk about is the resumption of Hollywood.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good because that's what's needed. That's what we've got to get these people back to work and us back screen watching. So how's it going to happen?
That's it. Papa needs his shows to watch. So this is what has to happen. You can't, so what was it, on Thursday our time, so it'd be like Wednesday afternoon in the US, the vote was decided on, the agreement was decided upon, so everyone got the push notification on their phone saying things are good to go. So within a couple of minutes of that, apparently, there was a whole bunch of text messages being received by staff, cast, crew members, associated other people, all saying, hey, look, work's back on, strike's over, get back to work on such and such a date. So, like, it's all happening, but it takes time to get this stuff happening. You can't just say, I'm going to put on a show on Monday. Like, there's a lot of pre-prep that needs to happen.
Sure.
So, on average, to like the quickest time period, like the absolute quickest they can make this happen is about 2 to 3 weeks. So, the first show is actually announced as going back into production. They're all US broadcast shows. So these are the ones where that wheel of, like, that engine is like just a well-oiled machine at this point. So the most well-oiled of the machines is the Dick Wolf shows. So you think about like your Law and Orders, there's like 3 of those on the air. There's, I think, 3 or 4 FBI shows, an equal number of Chicago programs. That's your Chicago Fire, your Chicago PD, your Chicago Bagel Stand. All those programs, all churned out, all a bit cookie cutter. It's easy to get those back up and running. Well, easier. Like, none of this is really particularly easy. Okay, so writers have been back for a few weeks, so like they've got scripts ready, they're all good. It's just that production element needs to start up again. So that's going to start happening from the 27th of November. So that's the very first one's happening. Okay, and then over like the next week or two, you're going to start seeing other shows come on. Challenges are for, because we're talking mostly here about broadcast network, because that's the engine.
Yeah, about the TV,
sort of stuff.
sure.
This is the stuff that can happen quickest. Yeah. So their big thing is they work on a TV season that runs September through to May. Problem is that they had all these shows that they announced are starting in September, which, we've blown past that, and no shows haven't into production yet. So a bunch of those shows are actually going to be held over for next year's TV season. So, and the difficulty there is that they've been greenlit, and that's still like a year away. Are they even necessarily still going to happen? Like, is probably the question some of them have on their minds, but we'll see some of them. Some of them that were announced to start are like fairly close to being able to get straight into production. So the one I've been most concerned about is Elspeth, which is a spin-off from The Good Wife. That show apparently is good to go. So they're going to be in production on that in the next couple of weeks. And, we'll have 10 episodes running next year sometime. And that's what we'll see for this year. It'll be 10 episode seasons across the board, because that's the number of episodes that you can produce and get on the air sort of to run through by the end of May. So
of course.
That's kind of what we're looking at. So you've got
a framework.
Yeah. So you've got all these network shows. You've got a bunch of pilots that were, shot, but then no further episodes made. And some of those will be on. Some of them won't be. Some of them will just be delayed. We'll find out what happens there. Things like Stranger Things. So that's a Netflix show, obviously. Production's resuming back on that really, really quickly. You've got 2 problems there. One, it's been forever since the last season. It's a huge priority show for Netflix. The other thing is that those kids aren't getting any younger, and they really don't look like kids anymore. In fact, I don't think any of them are under the age of 18 at this point. Like, they're all well and truly past that. Production slowdowns on that show have meant that, well, they've reached, some of them haven't reached US drinking age yet. They can have a beer over here. That's fine. But we've seen such gaps between seasons that there's actually been whole periods of their lives where they've gone through the gangly teenage, bad teenage moustache era of their lives, not even captured on screen because of the gaps between seasons. I did the math on it this morning. Joe Keery, who's one of the older teens on the program, He's actually so
Gorgeous
old
hair.
now. He's older than old lady Gabrielle Carteris from Beverly Hills 90210, and that started back in 1990. That's
You have
really
done your
old to be a
homework.
teenager on TV.
That is very old to be a
Yeah.
teenager. And quite frankly, I took offense at the teenage Manky Mo because I've got one right now. But I took your point.
Yeah, you'll get past it one day. Look, so you've got all that, but then the other thing to keep in mind about all of this...
It's starting to shuffle again. It's starting to move again. We're going to get things up and running and get things going. How about on the film side of things? Is that going to sort of... Does that sort of rev up
that's
as
more
quickly?
Problematic.
Very, very.
Okay, so there's so many elements to all of this. So if we're talking about film, the big thing that happens film-wise right now is the Oscars. So this is the time of the year where you get the prestige movies coming out. So they're still coming out. But what we don't have is a whole bunch of actors from these shows who've been appearing on the various talk shows around the place, who've been making appearances in front of screenings for it, giving like a little talk before the movie. You're not seeing that happen. My podcasts, I haven't heard any actors like talking about, I'm not really in it for the awards. Like I haven't heard any of that. Okay, even though they're absolutely appearing on that podcast to be nominated for awards. None of that promotional sort of work's happening. So as a result, there's just been function rooms across Los Angeles that have been going under because, their usual revenue just isn't there. And it's just the whole thing. But what you're going to see over the next month or two is that's just going to ramp up. You're going to hear so much about the awards movies over the next 48 hours probably, as suddenly people are scrambling to get onto various shows and be heard because already they're a few weeks behind for nomination campaigning. So that's the big thing that's happening with movies right now. But also, so many movies, like big Hollywood movies that were expected for the summer, got delayed until next year sometime because they didn't have access to go out there and promote it. So it's not just actors promoting themselves for awards, but it's them promoting for Hollywood movies. So those Hollywood movies, so Dune is probably a great example of this. Dune 2 was supposed to be out last weekend before. That's been delayed till I think March or April because they figured we need to make sure we've got some celebrities to talk this up. So you're seeing that, and now a whole bunch of movies got pushed back. When movies get pushed back, it means that other movies get pushed back and so forth. So essentially what you've got is a whole bunch of films that were close to being finished production that are probably going to return over the next couple of weeks, film a couple of, a week or two of shooting, and then it's in the can for post-production. So those films will start coming out at weird times because people are trying to avoid the calendar issues and all that sort of stuff happening. But then you just got a bunch of other films that were ready to go that have just had to have their production delayed forever. So film, it's not quite the rigid release schedule of TV. It doesn't have to be as structured, but it's still, there's deadlines they have to hit. There's weekends they need to be able to maximize profits through, and it's all just a bit of a mess. And various films operate at different production scales as well, and it's kind of all over the place. So who really knows for sure?
I can only be grateful that with all this mess going on during the week, I noticed at JB Hi-Fi that the Babylon Blu-ray was available for $10. So I went out and bought that. So I'll be watching that while Hollywood figures out its other problems, and I'm just grateful that we are where we're at. So good coverage, excellent coverage.
Look, I think it's exciting. There were still some copies on the shelf. I'm sure that thing was selling like hotcakes.
Oh, I was throwing women and children behind me to get to it. It was quite a rumble. So it was. All right. Okay.
Sorry, Simon. The other thing, and I'm just going to do this as a really quick spiel. The other thing just to keep in mind is that this strike has been going on now for 6 months for the actors. It was like 2 months prior for the writers. So the good bulk of this year is just wiped out. Okay. But during that time, this is a different strike than if it happened, say, 3 years ago. Actually, 3 years ago, that's COVID time. That's not a good comparison. We'll say 2018, 2019. If it was then, it's really just a business concern taking place at a time where the entire industry was flush. Things were going really, really well for streaming and for the cinema business, for exhibition. But 2023 is an entirely different game. And in this 8 months that there's been nothing really being made, we're finding a bunch of things happening. The contraction of the cable TV industry was already fairly dire at the beginning of this year. It is in really bad shape at the end of this year. Subscriber numbers are just next to nothing these days compared to what they were. So you've got that as an issue. You've got fewer people are seeing It's not that fewer people are seeing movies, but people are seeing fewer movies every year. So exhibitions got some issues there, and that's got to do with product sort of availability. But then even when product is available, people have still got this hesitancy to get along to movies. You've got the issue of streaming services. They're all in, consolidation mode. They are all scaling back, fewer productions every year. Also, they're trying to spend less money on production. It's largely Wall Street orientated sort of concerns that are driving that. And then you've got the other issue, which if you look at broadcast TV, this impacts cinema, impacts on streaming. It's the whole thing. The last year, we've seen such a rise of people using TikTok and YouTube for their general entertainment needs that there's just fewer people watching other stuff. There's only so many eyeballs. So as a result, the industry that people were in when they started striking versus the industry they're coming out of now, wildly different. And there's just so much less money and jobs and career opportunities available that it's going to be really interesting to see this next year as things start shaking out and as a lot of creatives start looking for other employment opportunities.
The entertainment sector that I've been watching and reporting on and tangentially been a part of for the last 30 years has never been in such flux, has never gone through such a period of change as I've experienced in the last 12 to 18 months off the back of COVID, now into this. And so, it's exciting to report on. It must be terrifying to have to draw an income from. And we wish all the SAG AFTRA people and all their negotiations the very best as over the next few weeks as they iron things out. Great coverage, Dan Barrett.
It stinks.
The big film of the week. Big. I mean, that's kind of a bit of a joke considering the box office that this thing's taking. The most talked about movie of the week is clearly The Marvels, the latest big Marvel action adventure.
I'm asking for one last fight.
Monica! You cannot protect your people.
You can stand tall without standing alone.
They're here. The Marvels, rated PG-13.
Uh-oh.
Monica, you gotta fly.
No.
Black girl magic.
Yes, there has been so much internet kerfuffle and chit-chat and talk about The Marvels, the latest MCU film, that I'm going to weigh in from a bit of a different angle on this. Now, you know me and MCU at the moment. I'm just not that interested. And when the buzz started to fall on this film and the internet started to rev up against it, I thought, oh no, I'm going to have to go and see this. I'm going to have to review it. The storyline for the film didn't excite me too much. A lot of the early buzz was that you had to watch 2 or 3 different series to really pick up on the intricacies of the plot. I can say that that's not entirely true because I haven't seen those series to any great degree. And what I did was settling into this film, I basically saw an adventure story about 3 women whose powers can intersect because one of them shares a quantum band, a bracelet with another villainous character, and without the second one, they can't control their powers and they interchange. You've seen it all in the trailer and it looks a lot of fun. There's a certain MCU element to that, and I guess that goes back to the rings and the glove and all that sort of stuff that Thanos had, but it's not really important. So I'm sitting there watching this film, and I'm thinking to myself, why am I enjoying this so much? And I realized the reason I was enjoying it as much as I was because I didn't care about the MCU baggage. I wasn't belabored with all the tiny little elements that MCU people may sort of pick at and dig at to find either problems with it or connective tissues with the other stuff. I didn't have that to worry about. What I was basically watching was 3 cool girls who find themselves fighting a baddie and crisscrossing over time to make it happen. So in a kind of like a Charlie's Angels with a little bit of razzle-dazzle special effects in outer space. That's essentially what it is. And in that regard, it works a treat. When things become a little bit heavier and the ending becomes sort of an existential battle against the baddie, and you might get caught in one alternate reality or you might not, I was kind of on board for where the film had taken me, and the fact that most of the characters have a mother-daughter dynamic that can be both positive and negative was about all the thematic oomph I needed to get me involved with the characters. All three of them. What's her name? Brie Larson, Kamala Khan, and oh my goodness, I've already forgotten.
Kamala Khan's a character's name and not an actor. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, well, they're all sort of joined together in a journey that I found to be really enjoyable. No, it's not any great piece of cinema, but it's a perfectly likable 105 minutes of popcorn entertainment that I think has caught a few reviewers off guard. I think it's sitting at about 61 or 62% on Rotten Tomato, which I don't think anybody expected it to be that high. And those that really rip into it and give it a bashing as a critic, I'm not quite sure what their film is reviewing, because there's nothing discernibly unlikable about what's up there on the screen. Having said that, if it's not your cup of tea, it's not your cup of tea. You're not going to be won over to the MCU at this stage of its life cycle, but I found it a perfectly enjoyable bit of popcorn fluff. So that's my take on the Marvels.
Yeah, look, so I went and saw this one last night. I caught it at an 8:30 session. Yeah.
Okay.
So I wasn't able to get to the press screening on Wednesday night, which was weirdly held the exact same night that your average Joes could go in and see it anyway. Not sure what was going on there. But, I mean, obviously it was to stop reviews from getting out, and I understand, because I kind of think this film's pretty terrible, Simon.
Really?
I feel this movie is so light on its feet, and it's sort of charmingly frenetic at times as well, that I think it could easily be mistaken as being entertaining. But when you actually sit and watch this movie, I don't understand how you're giving this a pass. First of all, I think that unless you actually know what's happened in the Captain Marvel adjacent MCU films from the last couple of years, you couldn't really follow this from an actual plot perspective. If you look at the characters, I didn't remember really what happened in the last Captain Marvel film until a cat started eating people. I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of a thing that I remember sort of vaguely from a film I watched once in a cinema.
That's explained
like
in the
4
film,
years
though.
ago.
That is explained in the Marvels. I didn't remember what happened and I saw it twice, and I still didn't remember what happened in Captain Marvel. But the fact that she's referred to as the Annihilator, and that
I know, but like all of that stuff isn't really sort of contextual for this movie. It's all stuff that is introduced in the other movies that you kind of need to be across that. I kind of feel there wasn't enough meat. Like, this doesn't stand on its own. This is all the character engagement and the construct of character all takes place elsewhere. You're kind of expected to know who all these people are and what their motivations are, what their standing is, by having seen other text. You couldn't actually just enter this one and be provided it. The opening sequence with the Kamala Khan character has her with a little sort of cartoon doodly thing about her engaging with Captain Marvel. Now, that's fairly well executed in terms of establishing her relationship to the Captain Marvel character. But what it doesn't really do is tell you anything about who she is and what her relationship is with her family, which is fairly important because they become important enough supporting characters through the thing. But we don't really know what that relationship is, like, clearly enough. There's no real substance to it. You kind of get like a bit of a nod to it, but it's not meaty enough to really sort of mean anything. But if you've been watching the Ms. Marvel TV show, you're across all of that. But they kind of need to
Which I haven't.
If they're not going to do that, but if they're not going to do that, Simon, they need to actually provide something in this movie which has some meat and substance, but it's not there. There's no character moments that really sort of make you feel as though it's of this movie. It's of the MCU. It's not of this. And if they actually
can't agree with that. I can't agree with that.
Simon, if they had the framework of the film based on that relationship between the Ms. Marvel character and the Captain Marvel character, okay, and you kind of see the movie was sort of setting that up at the beginning, but then it's just kind of like, I mean, there's that phrase about how you should never meet your heroes. If they lent into the idea of that and actually played around with what it means to meet your hero, that'd be something. Instead, you just kind of got this girl who's sort of fangirling over this other character for the entire thing. That doesn't really have any sort of payoff. It doesn't really build or...
Oh, I disagree with that. I think
it's just kind of some silliness on screen.
No, I disagree with that.
It's like girl meets a hero, girl's happy with hero, they fight together. That's the entire arc that they go on together.
No, it isn't at all. I think the interplay between the characters and the history that Captain Marvel has with Monica Rambeau, that Captain Marvel has with Monica Rambeau, and that Kamala has with Captain Marvel, I think that's incredibly important to sort of providing this film with all the substance that it needs to bring these characters together.
I agree. it is important, but it's not in this movie. It's all
It
lip
is.
service, and no, Simon, it's really not. I think you've given this way too favorable a pass because
not at
people
all
on screen
not at
are a
all.
little
I
bit
think
charming.
I think it earns its stripes. I think as Kamala Khan, I think Iman Vellani is a terrific presence on screen, and I think she brings a lot of energy to this. I think all the actors work really well together and create very distinct and very strong superhero characters, but not overblown. This is what a superhero movie should be for me. It's just enough substance. It's just enough fun. The big ponderous, the Earth's going to end and Thanos is going to wipe out mankind, all that malarkey where everyone is so morose and apparently bored through the whole film. With this one, there was a lightness to it. There was an excitement to it. There was some great visuals to it. I thought the scene with the musical city was hilarious and very well done.
I just don't think that was earned at all. Like, it sort of seemed like it was building up to something and then they don't do anything with it. And that's kind of the problem with the entire movie. There's all these elements that are introduced to it that have no payoffs. They don't really build. They don't really deliver on it. Like, it's just kind of, here's a thing that happens and then that's it. And the set pieces just aren't really memorable because there's no payoff to any of them. Like, I don't really know why I'm in most of these locations most of the time.
Okay. No, I thought this unfolded in a comic book logically way that I was on board for. I thought they got the tone right.
You need to read more comic books and see what logic actually is, sir.
No, they don't, because there is no logic to comic books. I think this one set up its own logic and stuck to it really, really well. Look, I'm all for the Marvels. We'll agree to disagree on this one, but I thought this was one of the better executed Marvel movies. Bear in mind, I'm looking for something fresh and new in all my Marvel films. I acknowledge that I was one of the few who liked Eternals for that very reason. I acknowledge that I was one of the ones who hated the last couple of Avengers movies for the reasons I've already stated. So I know I'm coming at this from a different sort of angle. I just think it's a valid one.
Look, I'm not a huge Marvel supporter just generally. I'll go and see all the movies because I like sort of big superhero spectacle just generally. But increasingly, there's just a problem with these Marvel movies, and we talked about this sort of at length in last week's podcast, I think. But it just kind of feels as though there's just a familiar house style. They're not really sort of stretching things. These movies don't stand as movies on their own. And all the problems I had with Marvel was captured in The Marvels, which seems appropriate considering the title and the branding around this. It just kind of feels as though this was absolutely for the hardcore fans only. If you go into this expecting this to be a movie that stands on its own, then I don't know how Simon was that impressed by it because I don't really know what's in it for you. And also, just a final thing, I'm going to ruin one of the big sort of plot twists on it, which is that if you're expecting a fleet of cats who can all ingest a large number of people and regurgitate them afterwards, why is that the easiest way to gather a whole bunch of people and travel them across the universe that way? Because at a certain point, you're going to start losing cats, and those cats will be walking the earth and spitting out people God knows where. I don't know how you get all of your cats with your people inside from one side of the galaxy to the other. It makes no sense. I expect more of Captain Fury, Nick Fury, Admiral Fury.
You do
What's his
focus
actual
in
military
Nick
title?
Fury. I can't remember. Yeah, One Eye Fury. So you do find a way to focus in on the strangest things to pick apart a movie for.
But for the final 30 minutes, you're watching them chase these cats around to ingest all these people, and I'm sitting there going, this makes no sense. But, like, that's kind of the thing. They chase these silly ideas, but, like, they don't really give it a good reason why. Like, just give it a solid reason. Like, say, hey, look, let's get these cats, and then to have all the cats in this one ship and take it over. Like, that's some logic, but there's just no logic. And it
Captain Cranky
silly,
Pants has ruined...
busy time.
Captain Cranky Pants has ruined one franchise. Let's let him ruin another. He's going to review 007 Road to a Million.
Oh, Simon, if you thought I hated Captain Marvel, wait till I talk about 007 Road to a Million.
£1 million, man. What wouldn't you do?
I put real people into a James Bond adventure and placed 10 questions around the world. If they find them, answer them, they win £1 million. The only thing standing in their way is me.
Simon, I got 15 minutes into this. I had to turn it off. I persevered only for reasons of critical integrity.
All right, okay.
It's got
Brian Cox in it.
Well, I mean, first of all, that's a problem. Like, I don't know what Brian Cox is doing in this. And I found out during the week what Brian Cox was doing in it, apparently. And you can tell that he's not happy with the final production of it because, you don't say what he said without trying to justify your engagement in this project. Basically, he said, I thought I was signing up for a James Bond movie. I didn't realize it was this. And that says everything.
Talk to his agent about that. That should be a lot more obvious on paper. Well, give us a bit of a rundown. What is 007 Road to a Million, and why are you so cranky about it?
Okay, so the whole thing with a reality show is that there should be some sort of pretense of reality, as opposed to one of these. It's kind of one of these sort of modern reality shows where it's very filmic in its presentation style, where you're not really capturing people's sort of real reaction to anything. Instead, you're watching maybe their fifth or sixth take as they're sort of recreating sort of how they felt about something. That's even punctuated with little lines as they kind of give their dialogue's more about providing narrative tissue than it is about sort of exhibiting a real life concern or thought about where they're really in. I'm trying to think of a good example. Sorry, I watched this a few days ago and it just stank so badly. I've been trying to put it out of my mind since, so I'm just trying to latch onto things here. So the dialogue's not really realistic. It feels like it's been re-recorded a number of times, and it's like, you're on the boat now, sort of approaching Venice. How about you sort of have a line like this, you might want to say, and then the person who's clearly not an actor will deliver that line, and it doesn't feel authentic, and it just kind of feels dumb. Okay, but what it is, the entire premise of the show is that the Brian Cox character is some sort of a narrator. Again, they never explain what he is. It's a Captain Marvel problem. He's just kind of there, but like you don't understand what's really going on because they never explain it. So he's chosen, I think it's like 8 teams. I haven't paid much attention. There's like 8 teams of 2 people, and like they're from different parts of the UK in terms of culture and perspective. Okay, and each have to go and take part in like various little challenges, so like sort of trivia competition type things and decisions that needs to be made, and it takes some jet setting across Europe in a James Bondy kind of a fashion. But that's the only thing that really connects this to James Bond is there's a James Bond theme at the beginning and there's some European jet setting. That's kind of about it. The rest is basically every generic reality competition show, only with this sort of strong layer of...
Has this all come about because Amazon now own the MGM studio and they're trying to sort of squeeze a little bit of extra revenue out of one of their franchises? That's what it sounds like.
Politely, yes. I mean, that's all it is. The Broccoli family don't want to do us. Well, yeah, that's it. So the Broccoli family don't want to do a TV series around James Bond, which is what the Amazon guys are desperately after. So this is the compromise. Yeah, you've got Brian Cox sort of speaking into a microphone, and so all of his moments, there's narration over the top of him as well, where he'll sort of say, that was unfortunate, and then he'll sort of sit back and he'll sort of stroke his beard for a moment. It's just all just silly artifice. And I was thinking, look, there's ways to do a James Bond reality show, which is actually probably fairly fun, because when you hear the idea, James Bond reality show, you start thinking, well, what are the elements of James Bond where you could sort of play around with that? I'm thinking James Bond, fairly sort of suave guy, fast cars, global traveling. Like they kind of do the global traveling, so like that's kind of there. But when I think about James Bond as well, some of the strengths, like the hallmarks of it, is I think about like 1960s UK sort of mod culture. I think about sort of youth and vitality misogyny. And a little bit of misogyny, but like misogyny, but not even necessarily like in the bad ways. Like there's
good misogyny, you mean?
Like, no, but like you can watch a James Bond film and go, well, that was misogynistic, and you can kind of excuse it because there's a dirty part of you that kind of enjoys that. Okay, like you don't necessarily want to be proud of it.
Podcast@gmail.com. You know the email address. Send your emails to Dan Barrett.
I'm not here to win woke credentials. I'm going to talk about honesty as to how people actually look and feel and relate to these things. Deep down, people sort of watch a James Bond movie and like there's some wish fulfillment taking place there, and people may not be proud of it, but in a sense, we're all meatbags and we all just respond to certain things at times. That sort of James Bond type misogyny, like that's just kind of the part of it. that's not really captured in this at all. Like, I kind of feel like some youth and vitality and someone who feels a bit James Bondy. Like, I don't know why the person who's running this is just some mysterious guy who... Is he from MI5? I don't think so. Like, that doesn't seem to be what his deal is. Like, why is he not like a... nobody needs more Osher. Actually, that's unfair. I kind of like Osher. I've had good personal interactions with him in the past.
Yeah, he'd be good for this.
But, like, I just don't know. I mean, he wouldn't... Like, Osher's got nothing to James Bond either. Like, why would you even? But, like, why not have a James Bond character send people on missions? Like, why not do that kind of thing? Why not have him drive up in his sports car and, like, actually engage with people? Or, counterpoint, actually have people that could be young spies in their own right, and that's the gimmick of the show. But instead, they're just like everyday Brits who come from a wide range of diverse Britain, which is weird because that's never been the James Bond movies either. Like,
that's a good point. It could be like an SAS thing.
Weird.
It could be like a training thing with a James Bond theme to it. I get that. Gee, they've dropped the ball badly here.
There's all sorts of things you could do for this, and it's just not there. Anyway, it's not very good. Watch it for 5 or 10 minutes, get the deal of it, realize I don't need to see any more of this. And there's a cliffhanger on the end of the first episode. I'm never going to see any more of this.
This is what it takes. My process is purely logistical. If I'm effective, it's because of one simple fact. I don't give a
What you saw there was a little clip from The Killer. It is the new David Fincher film, which premieres on Netflix this week. It's done a few days in cinemas around the traps as well. I was lucky enough to see it on the big screen. Looks beautiful on the big screen, as you expect a David Fincher film would. It also looks great with Michael Fassbender in the lead. He plays the titular killer. We meet him sort of going through the mental machinations of what he does early on in the film, just before a hit goes terribly wrong. When a hit goes wrong in his world, there is consequences, and he suddenly finds that his idyllic life on a Dominican island is upturned, and when he decides to get revenge for that, much carnage ensues. There are some very funny elements to this, which is probably not something you expected me to say. There's a bit of humor involved in the journey that the killer goes down. There's also a lot of bloodshed. This is not a pretty movie in terms of what happens to people. It's all there in the title. There's no mercy on his behalf. And if you're not into the vigilante mindset, then you're probably going to react negatively to the killer. But there's no denying that Fincher, in a very Fincher-esque way, but even in saying that, I was also a little bit surprised that at times it seemed more like a Soderbergh film. It had that propulsive energy. It had that really sort of lush cinematography that you expect from a Soderbergh film, not the kind of washed out palette that sometimes you get from all the browns and greys and beiges of a Fincher film. That's by and by. It is a really entertaining, really kinetic bit of film energy. And once you sort of settle into what Fassbender's doing with the lead role and the kind of monosyllabic take he has on the killers and the killer's life, it's a hugely enjoyable piece of entertainment. So it's called The Killer. It's on Netflix, and we'll be talking more Fincher in just a minute.
We will indeed. Question. So this is a Netflix movie that plays in some cinemas around the country.
Yes.
Where did you see it? Which cinema?
I saw it at the Chatswood Mandarin Cinema here in Sydney. Not one of the big auditoriums, but big enough.
Yeah. Look, I mean, if you went and saw it at like an event somewhere, it'll be playing in one of the small theaters. They don't book them into any of the VMAXs. So if you are seeing it, like, choose one of the art house theaters. Yeah. Anyway, I just curious to see where you saw it.
Have you watched this one yet, or you'll be waiting for the Netflix release?
Well, I want to see it the way that David Fincher intended me to see it, which will be on Netflix.
You texted that, and I didn't bite. I don't think he intended it to be seen on the small screen. He certainly didn't shoot it like it was for the small screen. It looks beautiful on the big screen. But yes, it has been picked up in a distribution deal for the Netflix people.
Look, the thing to keep in mind with Fincher is that he is a creature of television to begin with. Like, he started his career doing music videos. He has not been afraid to go and do like a whole bunch of TV commercials, even once he was a fairly big name director. He was very happy to get on board with Netflix, Mindhunter's probably the triumph
Mindhunters
creatively, but I guess Mank is
Love and
fine.
Robots. Yep.
Yeah, Love and Robots. Like, he's done a lot for TV, and I kind of feel like he went into this thinking, well, it's a Netflix film. Like, he's gone and made this for a Netflix viewing experience. I'm sure he'd prefer that people are watching it on a fairly nice TV at home rather than on their mobile phone. But I honestly believe if I had a chat with David Fincher, he wasn't shooting this for a cinema exhibition. He was watching it. He was doing it purely for...
Let me get him on the phone right now and see if that's true.
No, well, it appears I got a phone call coming through right now, so let's see if it's the big man.
All right,
Look, I'm very keen to see it.
Yeah, quality show. All right, you've got one to finish off with. It's called My Adventures with Superman. It's on the Binge network.
I can do this. I'm gonna hide my powers and be a normal man having a normal day. Hang on. Starting now. Don't. Who am I?
What was that?
Superman! I'd like to interview you for the Daily Planet.
Sorry, no comment.
Yeah, look, so this is streaming on Binge now, Simon. My Adventures with Superman. I'll admit, I was a little bit nervous in the way that there's been a number of Superman-related cartoon series and live-action shows over the last however many years. Quite a few. Not as many as you actually think there are. There's a lot more Batman cartoons than there have been Superman, but, you know, that's just kind of the nature of things. I was a bit nervous because I have to say a lot of the animated shows I haven't really enjoyed that much. The 1990s version is probably the longest running and most successful of them. I just never really cared for it too much. It took too much from the 90s Batman show in terms of style and design that, I don't know, I was just always a bit cold by it. It just didn't really resonate. There was a pretty good Superman cartoon in the mid to late 80s made by Filmation of all people. It only runs for, I think, maybe 14, 15 episodes, but it's pretty good. Animation's not great, but, you know, the spirit of intent's kind of right there with it. That's probably the best version of them, but I came to this one not really, expecting much from it, and I really love this program, Simon.
Wow,
what's
that's a big
fun about this program? Yeah, so look, what's fun about it is that it takes the Superman character and his supporting cast because... look, the thing I think most people sort of don't really think about with Superman is that the reason why the character works isn't because of Superman, who's a great character in his own right, or Clark Kent, his, human, everyday character. Although really, Clark's the real guy, Superman's just what he can do. That's just how I feel. I'm just putting it out there.
Hey, it's there. Screen watching podcast.
What?
At gmail.com.
Yeah. Well, he's a strong character. What makes him like a great character, a super character, if you will, is the supporting cast. It's the romance with Lois Lane. It's the best friend with Jimmy Olsen. It's the best. It's the boss in Perry White, and then the other supporting cast members that populate the world of Superman, which change and shape and whatnot depending if you're reading the comics and which era of the comics or the movies or TV shows. It's always a little bit different on a peripheral, but it's that core group of four that really make this work. More modern interpretations also bring in sort of Ma and Pa Kent. Traditionally, they died when he was like a young man, and then by the time he's Superman, they're not around anymore. Sometimes the mother's still alive. It changes around a bit. But this incarnation, the parents are still alive, and that's kind of nice. But what's really fun about this is it starts out, and you notice from a creative standpoint, they've taken all their cues from anime. So already they're sort of freshening up the idea of American animation and what Superman can be, because Superman, he's been around since the late 30s. He changes a little bit here and there, but there's a sense of him in the current era where, much like Mickey Mouse, you can't do too much to sort of evolve the look and feel of the character without sort of breaking it. So there's something that you expect from a depiction of Superman these days, which by introducing an anime element to it all, it actually works really, really nicely. And it's not just sort of visually, but the way that anime works and the way that characters relate to each other, that's kind of a function of this as well, which is interesting. So you've got that, and that's probably for the first 2 or 3 episodes, it might be first 4, I'm not too sure. There's 10 episodes for this first season. It just kind of plods along being, it's anime Superman. And so you kind of see that. It's got the setup for it is that Lois, Clark, and Jimmy, they haven't been at the Daily Planet for very long. They're all junior reporters, and they're really sort of interns more than anything else. They're being asked to get coffee for the other journalists. They're not really doing much, but they all want to break out and be recognized for the skills that they have. They're very eager to, to make it. So it's about them in like the early sort of stage of a career, all working together as like a tight group, like a friendship circle of 3. But what happens after about 4 episodes when Lois realizes, wait a sec, this Superman guy that's being around, this Clark Kent guy, wait a sec, they're the same guy. And so it just ends like a couple of episodes in where she just figures it out. And then the show evolves. Really? It starts taking it from a sense of betrayal and how she feels about like this sort of lie going on. There's a sense that what if this guy and like all of his amazing powers, which are far beyond anyone else on the planet, what if he's not really telling the truth? And, you know, what sort of trust issues sort of exist there? And she wants to believe him, but part of her journalistic side says maybe there's actually something that's a little bit sort of awry from here. But then what happens when they actually form a relationship and you've got 2 people in a friendship circle who've got a love relationship taking place, and then you've got someone on the outside who is suddenly being pushed even further on the outside, like Jimmy starts going off and engaging in his own sort of little adventures. And some of that takes into
taken an interesting turn.
Well, this is it. So it's about him sort of going off, and he's really into like alien conspiracy sort of stuff, which you can see how that fits with like Superman to a certain degree.
I'm so on board with this.
Yeah, it's a Simon Foster story for like that's the back end of the season. But like it's fun. It's a show that evolves. It mixes up the Superman sort of mythos to a point where everything feels fairly fresh and interesting. My Adventures of Superman, yes, please. I want to go on so many more adventures with this show because it kind of approaches it all really smart. And if we're going to talk about comic book logic, the great thing with this story, and it does have plot lines that carry out through the 10 episodes, is that every episode tells you everything you need to know to be able to understand the 30 minutes that you're about to engage in. And all the characters are vibrant and fun, and it delivers everything in a 30-minute installment that the mercilessly short 105-minute Captain Marvel film absolutely did not for me.
My Adventures with Superman is on Binge. I'm going to make an editorial decision here. We're going to roll straight into what else have you been watching very quickly. I just want to mention off the top of the hat, the new Ghostbusters film dropped a trailer this week, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. And I want to mention it quickly because I was a little bit caught off guard by the fact that this has turned up without all the history of who's going to be in it, how they're going to shoot it, are the women going to do it, are the boys going to do it, it stars the kid from Stranger Things. And instead of it being a whole sort of legacy deal where we try to find out, does Howard Ramis appear or is Bill Murray in it, that sort of stuff, it literally just the trailer just literally jumps into a Ghostbusters adventure, a Ghostbusters comedy. So when you do see Bill Murray pop up, or Dan Aykroyd, or Paul Rudd, or Finn Wolfhard, or all these characters who've had a little bit of time or a lot of time in the Ghostbusters franchise, in the Ghostbusters universe, you're sort of saying, hey, maybe this could be the comedy adventure we're looking for. So I was pretty chilled by the trailer. I was quite excited by it. So Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, I think, is dropping in. Check out the Facebook page where I put the trailer up and put the date. I want to say March next year, but I can't remember off the top of my head. So
it's March or April, yeah.
Yeah, March. So I'm looking forward to it. It looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I saw, what was the last one called? Ghostbusters Afterlife? Is that the name
Afterlife, yes. You poo-pooed that.
Yeah, I really wanted to like that one, and that left me so cold.
It was burdened by memory, and this looks like that burden has been lifted. That's what's coming across in the trailer, which is why I thought it was worth mentioning.
I mean, I don't think memory was the only problem with that, but sure. Look, a couple of other things I've been watching is the new season of For All Mankind is out, season 4. I really love the first 2 seasons. Season 3, I had a few issues with. Didn't really quite sort of, didn't quite deliver in the way that it needed to. Season 4, I think, sort of throws off some of the shackles of the 3rd season in that there was because this is a multi-generational show which takes place from the late 50s. I tapped out in 3. I didn't get to 3. Yeah, and for good reason. The problem was that they just seems to be reluctant to jettison characters in a way that sort of makes sense for the premise of the series. And the characters they sort of stuck with, there was particularly one storyline with, I can't think of the kid's name. He was a kid in the early seasons that's now an astronaut by the time season 3 comes along. And he was a dud character in season 2, and they just tripled down on him for season 3, and it just doesn't pay off. Season 4, they've gotten rid of most of the cast by this point, and they're kind of actually really evolving the story through. There's still a couple of like holdovers which don't really make a lot of sense and just feels a bit awkward. It's an improvement. I don't think it's quite to the heights that late season 1, early season 2 were definitely sort of at, but it's amiable enough, and I think perfectly fine for your week's viewing, but it's certainly a show that's probably past its peak, I think, at this point. Something that I think everyone should check out, and I came close to doing a proper review for this, but just didn't have enough time to watch enough episodes to really get my brain around it, is a show called The Buccaneers. This is a show, it's, it's very Bridgerton inspired, would probably be the way to
very what inspired?
It's
Little Britain?
Story, Bridgerton.
Oh, okay, yep. Bridgerton, I thought you said Little Britain.
Very popular Netflix show.
I know.
Yeah, very Little Britain inspired, yeah. It's just a whole bunch of girls in the 1890s who are like, no, computer says no. No, not Little Britain, Bridgerton. It's basically, if you think about it, being sort of Little Women by way of Taylor Swift is the way to really sort of throw yourself deep into this show. So it's a group of young girls. They're American girls who have, they're certainly out there as, women of this time, and, their social stature would be that the idea of finding some sort of a husband is something which is sort of playing in their worlds a little bit. But the new money socialites who are, out to mingle. Basically, they're told that, hey, look, there's an opportunity for you to go to London. And so they all go to London. The woman that's sort of looking after them is Christina Hendricks, people know from Mad Men. The young cast, love her. The young cast of women, like, they are all very sort of fun and frothy, and they're all over the place. This is a show that has some colorblind casting. It's very sort of socially adventurous, sexually adventurous, but not really like overtly in a gross sort of a way that kind of is fun for like a 20-year-old woman to watch. It's just a thing. It's got like a banging soundtrack to it. Like, it's just a really fun, engaging watch. I'm not probably the right sort of audience for it entirely, but like, I had a great time with it.
They're doing good work, Apple TV Plus. You wouldn't let me talk about the Enfield Poltergeist, but that's a show that I love. 4 episodes of it are very cool, so check that out as well if you're over on the Apple TV platform. All right, let's rock on into the intermission.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's intermission time.
Okay, Simon, we're going to keep the intermission a little bit tight this week, but do you want to explain what we're doing here?
Well, you and I, as you've so delicately put here, we're men, and men like David Fincher movies. So we're going to have a look at, in lieu of The Killer dropping on Netflix and moving through cinemas very quickly, our favourite moments, our favourite films from Mr. Fincher. He has come into his own during our lifetimes. After a fairly rocky start with Alien 3, he's now considered one of the big cheese, the head honcho in Hollywood circles. He's a director that actors want to work with, and these films are always worth looking at, even if some have stumbled a bit along the way. But so we're going to chit-chat about David Fincher. You kick us off.
Okay, so look, I was trying to think about my relationship with David Fincher. First film I would have seen of his would have been, it was Alien 3. But like, to my mind, he wasn't really David Fincher at that point. I was seeing an Alien movie, probably a year or two too young, considering the autopsy scene of Newt right near the beginning of the film. Sorry, spoilers. That was a bit grim. But like, the first time I really started paying attention to Fincher was, I guess, the same time, most people were. Sort of Seven came out, which Seven, I don't think I saw in the cinema. Like, I caught that one on, I think, DVD a few years later. I'm not sure. It took me some time to get around to Seven. The Game was something that I did see in the cinemas, and that really sort of caught my fancy. But yeah, like, I don't know. I just don't think I was really taking him seriously at all until Fight Club, which is unfortunate because, there's a bunch of great films he'd done pre-Fight Club, sort of leading into it. Oh, and Alien 3, which isn't very good. And, I'm pretty sure he even cops to that himself. But like, when I think about David Fincher, the things that, like, what I really like about him is probably more the David Fincher that we're seeing sort of from Zodiac and Mindhunter. The two of them I see as being sort of very similar in approach, which is like both of them are very sort of I can never say the word.
Methodical.
Methodical. There we go. I just couldn't even get my brain to it. Both very methodical. Like both of them take that sort of journalistic sort of spirit of intent, where it's kind of they're finding sort of small elements and doing some exploration, so it really gets to the heart of what the thing is. So in Zodiac, it's very much a film of journalism. Okay, but when you look at that same sort of sensibility applied to Mindhunter, it's about two investigators, and while you could certainly take elements from Seven into Mindhunter, it's kind of a little bit more grounded than that, where it's about these sort of long form journalistic style interviews they're doing with serial killers of the time. Yeah, I don't know. I just really appreciate him. It's that slow, methodical approach to telling a story. When I saw Zodiac, it was the best possible experience of it, where I didn't know anything about the movie. I didn't actually even know it was a David Fincher movie. I think it was like this is my memory, and it may not necessarily be accurate, but to my memory, it was a fairly sort of hot sort of spring or summer when it came out here. That may not be true, but my memory tells me it was. But we were just looking for a movie to go see. We went to a fairly rundown cinema. Well, then rundown. I've done it up since then. The Hawthorne cinemas, and they were very old and rickety, and it kind of felt like the sort of cinema that if I was sitting in the same chair that I might have been sitting in like 1972, it would be, entirely possible. So like it was an old cinema that kind of felt like the place where you should be seeing Zodiac. It was kind of just like that perfect experience for it. And so whenever I think about Zodiac, I kind of memory burn flashback to the experience of sitting and watching it. But yeah, for me, that's Fincher.
I guess for me, this probably speaks to that little bit of an age difference that you and I have, because I was well aware of Fincher going into Alien 3 because of the music video work he'd done. Express Yourself, Oh Father, and Vogue for Madonna. He'd done a lot of Paula Abdul stuff back in the day. He'd done Cradle of Love for Billy Idol. Yes, I'm reading this off his IMDb list, but he was... Janie's Got a Gun from Aerosmith. Oh, my God. So he was the go-to guy for cracking stylistically challenging new videos. And those have gone on. Things like Vogue and Express Yourself have gone on to be sort of classics of the music video genre. So I would credit those as being one of my three sort of most influential Fincher moments. Alien 3, I've got an interesting story to tell about Alien 3. Yes, we know in hindsight with 2020 vision that they gave this hot young director the keys to Hollywood to make Alien 3. When they started seeing the rushes, they sort of went, oh, my God, what's he doing with our franchise? And, there's all those horrible stories about him being locked out of the edit room and 20th Century Fox taking over and him promising never to make another movie ever again because of his experience. I have a very vivid memory of coming out of the Roxy Cinema Parramatta with a young lady I was seeing at the time. We'd just seen Alien 3. And I said to her, that was a mess, but when he's given a great story, he's going to make a great film. And I stand by that. And as his career unfolded, I was proven to be right. He has made some great films, and I've certainly gone back and watched Alien 3 quite a few times. Yes, it's a mess, and some very odd decisions were made with the franchise elements of it. But there are some moments in there which are cracking visual sort of frights and icky stuff that I stand by. And I know he hates the film and what they did to it. But yes, 7 was important. There's a little film in there called Panic Room with Jodie Foster and a young Kristen Stewart. And I would say that's as close to what he does with The Killer as he's ever done before. Panic Room was a very slick bit of entertainment that was just meant to be bad guys chasing after a woman and her kid. And there's an element to that lightness of touch and that very sort of the B-movie origins of that in The Killer. So it's not like The Killer is a unique sort of vision for him. He's done it before with Panic Room. I too loved Zodiac. Boy, you look at the run of films that he went through, Panic Room and then a bit of a break, but then straight into Zodiac, then Curious Cases of Benjamin Button, which is a film that not a lot of people talk about now. And I remember thinking at the time that this is another film which took a lot of really interesting turns but doesn't really work as a drama. But then The Social Network, which was a fantastic bit of work, plus early episodes of Spacey and House of Cards. So, yeah, he's done some terrific work. I can't remember whether you liked Mank. I really liked Mank, but I know a lot of people didn't. I think if I'd have to say my favourite Fincher film, boy, that's a tough call. Maybe also Zodiac. I didn't warm to Fight Club, much like the rest of the population. It didn't do much business on release, but it certainly has done since. But I would also say Seven is one of my favourites. So, yeah, he's a terrific filmmaker.
See, I really like Fight Club. So, I mean, I was the exact right age for it. So, 19 years old when Fight Club came out, like, you know.
You see, I don't think I saw that at the movies. I think I had my first daughter when that came out. So, I was going through a bit of a movie drought then. So, that was one that I caught up with on DVD.
Yeah. I mean, DVD really sort of saved Fight Club, I think.
Yeah.
Like, it became such a huge DVD release. Yeah. Fight Club, I do remember sitting in the cinema and realizing what the twist element of the movie was. Probably about 10 minutes before that. Well, it wasn't even early on. It was kind of like I realized what was going on. I remember I let out an audible and then people were just like looking at me, and I'm like, just stick with the movie.
I realized almost at the start of The Sixth Sense what the twist was, and I will stand by that. I remember when the victim
what was the twist in The Sixth Sense?
that Bruce Willis was really Samuel L. Jackson, or something like that. I remember the moment when the victim of the serial torturer was strapped to the bed and the SWAT officer was leaning over him, and then he moved on the bed and everybody in the whole cinema just went up and went down again. It gave everyone such a fright. That was a nasty, nasty piece of work and stands up to this day. I only watched it a couple of years ago. It's a great, great film. All right, Fincher, there you go. We've given you a wrap. Check out The Killer on Netflix or any of his films. Most of them are available on the streaming platforms. Or go back and watch some of those early music videos because they really were groundbreaking back in the days. In history, Dan Barrett, November 12, 1910. I was 7 years old. Cameras roll on a man leaping from a burning hot air balloon basket into the Hudson River, thereby capturing what? Cameras roll on a man leaping from a burning hot air balloon into the Hudson River, thereby capturing what?
I'm not sure what this would be. I'm not sure. Like, it's obviously going to be a technical thing. I'm just trying to.
It is literally the earliest filmed movie stunt. It has been documented that this was filmed for a silent film which doesn't exist anymore and whose name has long since disappeared. But this stunt was filmed from the banks of the river and represents the first movie stunt, which is pretty incredible. November 11, let's jump ahead to 1965. Director Kenneth Tynan becomes the first person to do what on British TV?
So he was like a guest on a TV show? Would that be...
Yes, he was. He was Chitty Chatty, and he became the Kenneth Tynan. Director I'm not entirely familiar with. Becomes the first person to do what on British TV?
I'm like thinking maybe get censored.
Oh, quite the opposite.
Get bleeped?
He said no. He dropped the big F word. First time that it had gone live to air on British television, and that happened on that day in 1965. Naughty.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, gosh.
November 15, 2019, which movie became the first R-rated film, US R-rated, to pass $1 billion at the global box office?
It's probably too late for this, but I'm thinking it's going to be one of the, what are they called? Like the bondage movies, the terrible suburban beige bondage films.
Oh, the 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah, 50 Shades. Is it one of those?
You were telling me off air before we did the podcast that you've got the whole collection of those and read them over and over again. No, it was in fact Joaquin Phoenix in the Joker.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that was R-rated.
No, not happy birthday. No, not that. Please, no, not happy birthday.
November 11, 1982, Anne Hathaway. November 15, 1929, Ed Asner. November 16, 1977, the lovely Maggie Gyllenhaal. And November 17, 1944, Danny DeVito. What could all these people have in common? I'm not even going to give you a clue. You should get this.
Oh, gosh. Oh.
Yes, I know. Anne Hathaway, Ed Asner, Maggie Gyllenhaal, Danny DeVito.
I've got 3 of the 4, and I'm trying to work out the connection between Ed Asner and Batman.
Yes, I knew that would be. So you've got the answer. It is that they're all tied to Batman.
Ed Asner, I'm guessing it'll be animated work. So I know that Ed Asner played Granny Goodness, which is kind of funny, on like the Justice League cartoon. So that might be a connection.
Or what was the other character he played?
Oh, I don't know
Batman,
what other character
the animated series, he played Roland Daggett in 4 episodes. Feet of Clay, Appointment in Crime Alley, Cat Scratch Fever, and Batgirl Returns. He played someone called Roland Daggett. But yes, you're right. Sure. Anne Hathaway was, of course, Catwoman. Maggie Gyllenhaal was, the girlfriend of Christian Bale at some point in the first movie, I think. And Danny DeVito was...
Second film, Rachel Dawes, played originally in the first film by...
Katie Holmes.
Katie Holmes.
Yep. And DeVito was the Penguin in still the greatest of all Batman movies, Batman Returns.
Again playing the love interest.
Yes, playing the love interest.
That's just how I read that movie.
I'm sure. It was very Tim Burton-esque. You're exactly right. My friend, we're at the end of this podcast.
I guess it has happened eventually. Look, folks, this has been Screen Watching. My name, Dan Barrett, joined by Simon Foster. If people enjoy, the idea of me, you can find me more on an email. It's called Always Be Watching. Find that one at alwaysbewatching.com. There you can find the latest news in TV, streaming, and film, and occasionally video games and other stuff that you find on your screens. And I also do like a bonus, wrap-up newsletter at the end of the week, which tells you about all the new TV shows that debuted that week that you could watch on TV that very night.
That has very quickly become must-read for me every day. I always open your... newsletter to see what's going on.
Did you read today's?
You can not yet. No, I think I deleted it straight away. I'm at Screen. Go to Facebook for at Screen Watching Podcast. Go to X for at Screen_Watching. On YouTube, we're at Screen Watching. Email us screenwatchingpodcast@gmail.com. Direct all your pro Marvel rhetoric to one Dan Barrett, and you can read my stuff screen-space.net. There you go. Yeah. Big week next week. Are we excited about next week's? I'm very excited about next week's.
I was going to say, come at me, Marvel Zombies. Come at me. I'll take you on. All of you.
Marvel Zombies. We're doing the new... It's a big month for Godzilla. Have you heard? We've got Monarch from Apple TV we're reviewing next week, and there's a big new Godzilla movie hitting the IMAX screens and big screens around the country at the end of November. So all things Godzilla.
Yeah, look, I'm pretty excited. What's the Godzilla film? It's called One Godzilla?
Godzilla -1, the first from Toho Studios since Shin Godzilla back in 2016. So I don't know if they're doing previews for you guys up there in Brisbane, but we've got a preview at the IMAX down here in Sydney the week before. So I'm super, super excited about that. I love my Godzilla.
Yeah, let's talk off, Mike. But folks, thank you very much for listening. We'll be back next week.
See you, everyone. Bye-bye.